Thank you very much. Can everybody hear me? Yep, thank you. As a slight introduction, it's been a very interesting journey for the last 2 years as I was completely out of my field. I decided I wanted a career change and came into the world of waste, having dabbled in hazardous waste for a small number of years, and now find myself responsible for the 2 biggest contracts across Cannock, Chase and Stafford Borough Councils. The first projects that I was given to deliver were the introduction of chargeable garden waste at Cannock and also renewing the contract with Biffa at Cannock. We couldn't have Biffa, and it's been out to tender this year. Both have been a success in the first year, which I'm going to cover half of that now, and I think I might quit while I'm ahead. So from the first slide, you will see this is the demographic of Cannock, the area that we cover. We've got Rugeley, Cannock and Hednesford. It covers a significant part of Cannock Chase, which was recently renamed as the National Landscape. And the property count in that area is 46,048 properties, which increases year on year around about 250 to 260 properties. Eligible properties for the service was around about 44,000. What we did find was a number of the ineligible properties didn't like to be left out of the service, and even though there is a charge, they didn't like that neither. So we couldn't win on either hand, and that sort of leads us to the complaints, which I know Philip and Jess touched upon just. We haven't had that many complaints in the service, considering which I will get to the target numbers and the achieved numbers, but we've not even broken 3 figures in terms of complaints, still less than 100 formal complaints. So we consider that quite successful. We operate a 4-stream waste and recycling collection service in Cannock, each container used to collect different waste streams. As you can see from the slide, I think most councils, local authorities are now delivering something similar with different bin colours in varying areas. We don't landfill and haven't since 2014, all of it going to the ERF for ashes, along with we're a member of the Staffordshire Waste Partnership with another 9 local authorities who operate similar or the same services. What you'll see there is the initial flyer and poster that we sent out to all of our residents. We had this in a number of formats. We had it on social media, we had it on posters, we had it on vehicle wraps. We sent it out as far and wide as we possibly could. Tried to keep it as limited as we could with certain information. I found through the process there was far too many people, far too many fingers in the pie, so to speak, which led to a lot of complications in how we were going to deliver the information that we needed to. And somebody had to really take control of it, with that person being me, and ask people just to step back from the process. We spoke to the members on a regular basis, but due to my sort of late introduction into the service, I discovered that there'd been very little consultation amongst the members and the residents of the Cannock Chase district. So that was painful and difficult in how we were going to get this message across when nobody was even aware that it was coming. So we tried to keep it as user-friendly with a couple of links on there where people could contact us. But again, there was too much involvement from departments that didn't need to be involved. What that did lead to was me speaking to most of the Staffordshire Waste Partnership, and one name did crop up repeatedly through that process, and that was Permaserve, which was very helpful, but I will come to that further on in the slides. The history of our garden waste collection service at Cannock, there's a brief view of it there. So when we first started collecting waste back in 2005, we had a couple of methods, as you can see, through to 2016. As I said, prior to my arrival, a decision was made to introduce a chargeable garden waste service. Like I said, the consultation could have been a lot better, I think, in my opinion. But following on from that and the conversations that we were holding, it was a lot better. I would encourage everybody to speak. I think in the last presentation it was mentioned about speaking to your neighbours, and that's something that we absolutely did, every single one of them, even the ones who hadn't launched it, and they found it beneficial, and since then have gone on to launch, certainly one of them's gone on to launch their own in a much tighter timescale than I did, I might add. So, the reasons why we introduced the service. We had the opportunity to withdraw the service completely, as per most local authorities up and down the UK. A lot of us don't have a lot of money to spend anymore, and it was something that we had to consider. We had to find savings. The other option was that we retain the service, and then obviously look to introduce a chargeable one and get an income stream into the council. If we'd have withdrawn the service, residents would have had to remove the garden waste themselves. We thought there was going to then be a risk of fly tipping and residual waste increasing. But in retaining the service, as I just said, we could generate income. So that's the decision that was agreed. So the service overview. Our subscriptions run from the 1st of January to the 31st of December. We placed a limit of 2 permits per household, although more can be purchased. But that has to be agreed in the back office because there's various reasons. Again, following those conversations that we had with numerous local authorities, people operating their own businesses from home, for example, might see this as a cheap way to remove their rubbish from their work. So we agreed with that. And there hasn't been too many issues with regards to that, mainly from private landlords who might operate small blocks of flats, for example. Might need 1 per bin, so they could come and get 6 permits if you like, that kind of thing. And then we've got the £38.50 per bin. Again, we didn't just pluck the figure out of the air. We spoke to all of our neighbouring authorities, took an average from them, but then we also decided to reach out further and go nationally and speak to other local authorities, and found the highest at £96, I think it was, per bin, and the cheapest outside of our districts. I think we found, no, I've got that incorrect, I do apologise for that, but it was, the average within our district came out at £52 per bin. So we had a look what we could do. I've told you incorrectly again, I do apologise for that. The £52 was the highest in our district, not the average. So we looked at the average, which is around about just over £38.50. We decided to go with that. Again, after speaking to PermiServe previously, they indicated, as was mentioned in the previous presentation, that they should not be fearful of putting your increase in, whatever it's going to be, whether it's 5%, 10%, because you're going to get criticism for it anyway. It was my idea to go in at £40, but it was decided against. So we went in at £38.50. 50 pence, believe it or not, has caused the biggest issue to people. Why not £38, why not £39? Bizarrely, but yeah, £38.50 was agreed. And we decided in terms of how people could subscribe, whether the online option was going to be the best option. It's proven to be so. I will get onto that shortly. But there's other options available again, including over the telephone, obviously, coming in person, and even a cheque payable option. I've pretty much covered what's on this slide in the last comments. But the payment options there, we've had the other added issue in terms of launching this service and launching a new CRM at the same time, which wasn't ideal, very challenging, and our department was decided it was going to be the guinea pig for that service, which, yeah, has caused quite a bit of pain amongst a number of people. But it's in place now and it's working currently. And again, just going back to what Jess said previously, one of the issues that we have had is the actual payment system itself. I'm unsure everybody's experience, and I'm hoping to pick up on this today. We have a system at Cannock where we effectively lose the customer through the payment system. They're given a code which they have to input. Looking at your face there, I'm sure you've had a similar experience. It's not good enough, it's not acceptable, it's really poor service for the residents, and it is something that we're looking to improve upon for the next year, particularly as we have exceeded our targets and the finance is there to introduce that, so I'm hoping that will be in place for the second year. Telephone payments via our contact centre, as I've said, chip and pin option at the Civic Centre reception, and cheque payments. And I would say to anybody, don't underestimate cheque payments. We spoke to our nearest neighbour in Stafford, who they have a bigger household number, and they advised we will get around about 200 to 300, maybe 400 at a push, and we've gone past 400 with less households. So I think you've really got to look at your demographic, your age profile, that kind of thing. So direct debits weren't offered, as they aren't available in our finance system. And again, speaking to some of our partners, I don't think it's something we will be looking to introduce, but again today I'm hoping to speak to people who might have had a better experience. As the added bit there says, so yes, I will be talking later. So, introduction to Permiserve. We were first introduced to Permiserve via conversations through the Staffordshire Waste Partnership, and I was able to speak to Louise directly. Things that you can see on there, we discussed ideas and timescales and costs, the process, which I was rapidly running out of time to introduce, and the integration of systems, which I was reassured by Louise that there would be no issue from Permiserve's side, and that's exactly how it's turned out to be. The samples that I've included in there, so the artwork was something we discussed earlier as well, and Louise did say about making sure that you get the artwork in on time. I think I did take it to the limit, frankly, but it was there on time, and again proved to be really good advice. And then outside of that, we had further meetings with Permiserve and our contact centre, Biffa, because of their white space solution that they use, and our IT team as well, and as you can see on there with GOS, which is the new CRM that we introduced. We felt it was really important to get everybody involved. I did mention several slides back about there being too many fingers in the pie, and I think that's what people have got to be careful about, because you can just find a lot of interference, and you need to remember that it's your service and the customers. That was the thing that always stood out to me. It was the customers and the residents that were the important people in it, rather than personal opinion and, shall I say, political point scoring. So, in November 2023, we went out to the residents with the postcard that I showed you earlier. Everybody received one of those in the district, even those who weren't eligible, just so they were aware of it. At that stage, we did start receiving a lot of telephone calls, when I say a lot of complaints, it's more grumbles, not formal complaints. People generally, I have to say, understood the reasons behind it. They'd heard the news about most local authorities struggling, Birmingham City Council was in the news at the time. So I don't think it was a surprise to anybody. And I think a big thing in our favour is that most of our neighbours had already launched the same or similar service. So it went live on the 6th of December 2023 in terms of being able to subscribe. And on day one, we had 845 residents signing up. If I'm brutally honest, I was a little disappointed with that. I thought they'd all be banging on the door, but by the end of week one, we had nearly 4,000, and at the end of month one, we had nearly 10,000. Those figures are slightly out of date. As of this morning, we are 8 off 22,000, and our target initially was 18,350, which was 40% of our stock. I will eat humble pie. I was advised again by Louise that I should aim higher. 50% was easily achievable, and as of today, that's exactly where we'll be. Refunds being issued to residents. We've had only just over 50. They can be, again, dependent on your payment system. The refunds can be complex, a bit of a time stealer. We've found, I think that's as much to do with our system and getting people trained on the systems as anything else. But we haven't had significant numbers. On the 22nd of January, that was when the actual collection started for the new service. And we estimated, as I said, between 40 and 50%, and we're just at 50% today. So we had 12,000 residents signed up by the 22nd of Jan. And we did have a few implementation issues regarding the payment system and the CRM. But as I said previously, most of that was down to the system that we use. Some of you may be more familiar with it, end call and mid call. It's words that I've never come across before and systems that I've never come across before. But like I say, I'm hopeful that, and I do have the Deputy Chief Exec on side too, that he will find the money for that improvement later this year. I threw this in here because I didn't know where else to put it, frankly, about allotments, because this was one that really caught me out. We have a number of allotments in Cannock Chase. Nobody had mentioned it through the process. but we had a significant number of people saying, well, who's going to collect ours? Why should we have to pay? Well, as somebody again mentioned previously, we also offer no concessions. It was if you want to pay. But the issue we had, there's no UPRNs on the allotments, so we were struggling for addresses. People were offering to give their home addresses, but that then wouldn't allow for the service to collect from the allotment. Ultimately, what we did do in the end was advise everybody that as you've got an allotment, you should be composted anyway. And that problem at the moment has gone away. I do think it will return. I think more people will come back in the future. But again, I will be looking to speak to people today to see if anybody's had that experience and what they're doing too. Some of the challenges that we've had, so the digital impact. Obviously, there was increased activity on the website. It didn't break it, so we were fortunate in that. And the payment system, as I've talked about, does need additional work, so I'm sure there'll be similar people in the same room who will have the same issues. The service impact, that was probably something that whilst we were aware of it, we possibly underestimated, but directly linked to the payment system, where the matching of payments has to be done. We offered up a percentage of the income to the contact centre, so they could get somebody full-time on it. It wasn't enough, frankly. We had around about 4 people initially, full-time, working on matching payments, but I do link that directly to the system. That has now calmed down, but obviously we're getting less people now signing up as the year progresses, but it's something we're keen to resolve before they start again later this year. Some training has to be delivered for our new CRM across all departments, so people have a greater understanding of this. And particularly the PermiServe system, again, we had training. Louise and the team, frankly, were fantastic with us. Catering for more than one team and on more than one occasion. But I would recommend that everybody does that. Not that PermiServe is a difficult system to use, I might add. So that was a report that we pulled off our system. Very basic, but gave us the information we wanted at the time, which was to see how many people had signed up, any additional bins, for example, when people were requesting to, how they'd signed up, that we needed to see whether it was online or the contact centre. What we didn't have in that at the time was the breakdown from the contact centre. We didn't have whether it was in person or over the phone. Just to clarify that, our contact centre also work on the reception of the Civic Centre, so there was a mixed bag in there of people walking in and telephone. That looks a complete mess in the middle of the map is another report that we're able to pull off, and it just gives you the location of where the collections are, where people have signed up to the service. It looks today a lot messier than that even. A lot of brown dots on the map. Communications, again, I think the biggie for me and all that is the consultation element. So it was very disappointing to find that we'd done very, very little of that. People not knowing about the introduction of this at all. Even councillors who had agreed to bring it in from one side and then a change of administration, they were then challenging from the other side. It was very difficult, fully supportive of it several months ago, and then arguing the actual opposite cause for their residents several months on. So it made it very difficult for the officers. But we were able to speak to them at Cabinet, and most got on board to try and resolve that. But the comms that we put out there, obviously we used social media, we used our website, vinyl wraps, posters, and we just got as much as we possibly could. That's just a small example on there, obviously. We used as much as we could, as often as we could, just to make sure that everybody was aware what was coming. I think it worked because the number of complaints that we received did reduce dramatically. And like I said, we still haven't, formal complaints, we still haven't reached even 100. Further comms, as you can see there, we had that consistency with the posters, the flyers, and the vehicle wraps. And we were able to include what the permit looked like as well, which we had some good feedback about that. People were beginning to ask questions by this stage, what the permit would be like, what they needed to do with it, etc. As you will see from this slide, and the pack itself, again, we had good conversation with PermiServe about what to include. They've got a wealth of experience in regard to this world. Again, we spoke to our partners, 9 different councils, all with different views. And it was very beneficial for us to get that information from everybody. And when we did send the pack out, we included the T's and C's in there if they were requested. We didn't send it out to everybody. Obviously, the more information you put in, the more the cost of sending. But again, Permissive were very open about the costs, and there was no issues. But so what we decided to include was, we had the branded envelopes, obviously. We included a welcome letter and the FAQs, the permit itself, and the T's and C's if the resident didn't have an email address that they were able to receive the T's and C's from. So far, we've had absolutely 0 complaints about the pack itself, the content, or anything related to that. There's been no issues whatsoever. We do get the occasional one that goes astray, and again, we've spoken with Permissive on a regular basis about that. I would say 99.9% has been down to the delivery of that. It's through the Royal Mail. We've had a few issues with them. We haven't had any of late, so hopefully that might have resolved itself. And that brings me to the end, so thank you all.